Greetings, fellow Wheel of Time lovers. I've been hyping up the Wheel of Time mud a lot on Twitter, obviously, and felt that 240 some characters on Twitter doesn't really allow me to capture the allure and subtle intricacies of the Wheel of Time mud. So the first question I had when I originally played the Wheel of Time mud over a decade ago was, what the bloody hell is a mud? So the plain and simple is that it is a multi-user dungeon slash dimension slash domain, depending on what type of game you're playing. This type of game was really popularized in the mid 80s and early 90s. So the essence of it is that it is a text-based game, kind of Dungeons and Dragons style role-playing, and other pen and paper games. The Wheel of Time mud was launched around 1993 and still has a pretty active and ardent player base. It is based in the Jordanverse, as it were, with the timeline in the series kind of mixed and mashed, so we're talking pre-series and also kind of mid and after. But you can still find Tabakfields in Emmonsfield, Trollocs in the Blight, and Brown Aja sisters busy with their noses in books. So the game is played slightly different depending on which side you align yourself, the dark side being primarily PvP oriented, and the light side mixes both RP and PvP elements. There are plenty of endgame activities like World of Warcraft, but they have the added risk of being rained on by either the dark side or the light side, just trying to ruin your fun. So in short, level up, collect loot, and do your best not to die or fall into a pit with a shiny new Heron Mark blade where it will be lost to the ages. So I will say on a personal level that when I had my first PvP experience, my heart was literally racing and blood and ashes if it didn't feel amazing to get my first solo kill on a Trolloc. I can honestly say it ranks up there with old school World of Warcraft PvP. So now we have that out of the way, let's move on to how we play it. So the MUD format isn't really as intuitive as most of your generic shoot 'em up games that release every 6 months. There are a lot of things you need to learn for yourself or dig up on the forums somewhere, which can lead to a lot of frustration and give you a bad taste in your mouth for the style of game. Our community members are absolutely amazing at helping newbies out, and I'll link a more detailed guide, although it is a little dated, to the beginning of the game, as I'll only be going to give a brief primer on how to get you started. So the first step on entering the Wheel of Time mud is picking a client. This is essentially just your way of interfacing with the game. Each have their ups and downs, and it can be rather difficult to choose one, and more so difficult to navigate at times. So I'm going to heavily recommend, if you want to give the game a try, use a web browser client to start, since there is no need to install or configure anything. You just go into the site, type the game domain, and poof, you're in. So I'm going to be using Roofless Mudslinger, since it's really easy to use, although its options are fairly limited as far as utility. So I'll leave the link for that below as well. So once we have loaded the site, we are going to type in the host name, which is game.wotmud.org, and our port is 2224. And connect, obviously. Once we have entered, we'll be greeted by a few details about the game, its creators, and the start of the character creation screen, if you will. Since it's a text-based game, you don't have any of the fancy sliders to make yourself look like a hook-nosed Saldaean or an especially ugly Trolloc. You have to use your imagination for that. So first, let's pick a name. So remember, this is the Wheel of Time, so something like Your Mom's Lover is just not going to get you by. It's going to get you a silly name pretty quick and kicked out of the game until you find just a better one. So I'm going to start with Alavin because it sounds like something you would see in the Wheel of Time. And then we are given the option of confirming that. Yes, that sounds right. And now we are going to pick our password. So let's go with not your mom's lover, which is not highlighted there. But I think honesty is the best policy whenever you're doing things either in game or life. All right, so now we are greeted with the option to choose our gender. So let's go with female because Alavin could be a female name. I mean, this is 2018 after all. As far as naming conventions go, nothing is off the table. Okay, so we are also greeted with several options, humans, Shan-Chan, and Trollocs. So for the purpose of the demonstration today, I am going to pick a human. It's a little easier to pick up, a wee bit safer, and a little easier to stat as far as your first character goes. So now that we've picked our race, we have multiple options for homelands. It can be a little confusing to pick a homeland, and I'll go over that in a later video. The homelands essentially determine your maximum stats that you can get for any given class and the ease by which you can get them. So we're going to go with Ilion because it is generally really easy to stat any given character from. And we are also going to pick the warrior class because again it's the easiest class to pick up, to stat, and just learn the game with. Okay, so now we are in the Circle of Light. You can kind of imagine this as heaven, I guess, but you don't want to end up here because it usually means that you're dead, and we want to avoid that as much as possible, but it's definitely going to happen. Okay, so the Kind Soul here gives us a few tips, tells you to read the homelands and stuff. It says tip 1 to stat a Borderlands warrior, and that's not really too true anymore. The only one we're really going to pay attention to right now is to ask the Guardian for a kit. So I'm going to type in tell Guardian kit, although T instead of tell would work. And now we have some basic statting equipment. So I'll type in EQ for equipment. And we have a staff and some leather garments there. Alright, so now we are going to start to enter the game. So our next step is typing D or down, and the game really shortens some of the stuff. Since it is a text-based game, you kind of interface with the world and play it by making more text, aka typing, and some of that can be a little tedious. So a lot of the commands you can actually have shortcuts for, or shortcuts that are just programmed into the game. So for the purpose of the game, I'm not going to be using the keypad or arrow keys to move around. I'm just going to use the first initial of the cardinal directions to move. And then we are also going to look at the post. And this is going to give an option of where we can enter the game. So if you wanted to enter at any given location, say we wanted to go to Emmons Field, we would type in enter Weave Emmons Field because I can't type, and then you would hit enter and you would be shot over to Emmons Field. For this demonstration today, we're going to go to the friendliest statting zone. We'll press down to get there. And we are now in the village of Kintara, which is just a smidge south of Camelot. So we got Clive here is poking us around and generally being annoying, so we are going to get out of his way. So we're going to go south a few rooms, and we will go west a couple rooms, and we've got somebody that's statting over here as well. and a couple more. Okay, so the way that we roll out our stats is to get to level 3, and the easiest way to do that, really the only way to do that, is just beating the snot out of some trees. So we're going to try Kill Tree, or K Tree for short, and we are off to the races. Alright, so because statting can be a little tedious, I am going to cut the video here and pick up once we have gotten to level 3. Okay, so now we are at level 3. It's time to type in stat and see what we got. Woof. Okay, so we got some really bad strength. We got great dex and great constitution. 19 is perfect for a warrior, but 11 strength just isn't going to allow us to get the job done with heavier weapons and the like. So to kind of just get us through this video, we're not going to stat anymore. We're going to enter the command T Guardian pre-rolled stats. Alright, so the game gives you what it determines to be playable for kind of your first character. So we're going to type in stat again, and we've got 19 strength, 19 constitution, average-ish mentals and dex, but those really won't come into play for your first character. So there is a ton more to cover, how to play the Wheel of Time MUD, but this is just the gist on how to get started and see how hardcore of a Wheel of Time fan you actually are. So stay tuned for just a little more tutorials, and remember, if you ever need help in the game, feel free to ask somebody on chat or directly, as so. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. If you want to go ahead and give this video a retweet if you like what you saw, and give me a follow on Twitter as well. I will keep you updated on in-game events that will happen and when I post more tutorials on how the game works.